Before we get into the episode, Ameen wanted to share this clip from Mozambique since we discussed the events in Leicester in this episode. Check it out.
I was born and raised in the city of Birmingham, and in the 80s, we took to the streets to fight neo-Nazis and skinheads. And when I say fight, I mean literally with fight, with bottles, bats, fists, get beaten up and beat up. But the purpose was to get these fascists, racists out of our streets, to keep them away from us. We'd go home sometimes, and I remember coming back once, battered. Skinheads had caught me. They kicked me in my face repeatedly with steel toe-cap boots. My blood was pouring into my mouth. I was choking on my own vomit, and the last words I thought I was going to say was La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah, and I screamed them out with spurting blood. I went home. My dad took me to the accident hospital. He saw the state of me. But in the accident hospital, there were 5 skinheads, all with broken noses, broken legs, broken arms, and God knows what. And in the midst of the fight, we'd managed to hurt them more than they'd hurt us. Our parents at that generation, they were hardworking. They believed that you get what you give, and they didn't believe in fighting back. But we were born and raised here, and this was our home just as much as it was of the skinheads. When he tells me to go back home, I'm going back home to Spark Hill. And no matter how much he tells me to get out of the country. So when we stood toe-to-toe with these fascists and racists and neo-Nazis, there was either you stay here or you push us out. And we pushed them out. And they're no longer around. Fast forward from that time till now, it used to be just about being brown. Our gang included even Irish guys, because they were targeted. Muslims and Hindus and Sikhs and black people all together. But now, in this new world we exist in, it's the targeting of Muslims. The communist Chinese, the capitalist American, the Hindutva Indians, the French. It doesn't matter. If you're Muslim, they're going to target you. What level you're practicing at, they don't really care. They don't really care whether you've got a beard or a hijab or a scarf, or they don't really care about that. If you say, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah, you're a target. And there's been a normalization of Islamophobia. So there's one thing I tell you, brothers, I spent 3 years in Guantanamo, 2 of those years in pure solitary confinement. I saw 2 prisoners beaten, tortured to death, with their hands tied to the top of the cage, to death, being kicked and punched to death by American soldiers. And that guy said on his lips, the last word he said, Allah, Allah, Allah. And they kicked him because he said Allah. They found it funny. His autopsy report and the entirety of his life is featured in an Oscar-winning documentary called Taxi to the Dark Side. What? Because he was a taxi driver. Taxi to the Dark Side. Do a search for it. Taxi to the Dark Side. I'm an eyewitness to that. After all of that, 3 years without charge, no trial, no court, no prosecutor, no defense, nothing. Just a cell that measured 8 foot by 6 foot. No window, no communication, no phone calls, no TV, no letters.
Yo, were you like chucking things in a river? There's a road there for letter or something.
There's nothing. You're in a cell. You're in a cage. You can't come out the cage. So what did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us to do in the midst of that? Learn the Quran. Reflect on its verses. Internalize them. Learn whatever you can from the small amount of books they give you. Write letters, write your thoughts. Prepare yourself for the outside world. And there's one thing I want to tell you guys, right? So you're facing off people who hate Muslims on the streets, mostly because they're ignorant. If you were to sit them down one-on-one, you'd easily break down the hatred. Easy. Because we did it with the American soldiers. And I can tell you, some of those American soldiers, I swear by Allah, in those cages said, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah, and some of them visited me in my home here. So don't let your enemy and your abuser and your tormentor and your jailer become your teacher. What do I mean by this? This terminology says, our enemy is not our teacher, comes from a famous mujahid. His name is Umar al-Mukhtar. He fought against the Italian fascists.
1923.
Fascists, yeah. In the desert. He was 70 years old. When the Muslims captured Italian prisoners and they wanted to torture them, he said, our enemy is not our teacher. Our teacher is who? Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam.
For 20 years we are
And if
poor.
he had been that way,
20 years we are
if
fine.
Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam had been that way, we wouldn't be Muslims today. Because the message of Islam couldn't have been spread by force. He forgave those who tried to, like Al-Wahshi and Hind and Abu Sufyan, he forgave them. And Islam, and they became leaders of Islam.
They're the one that chained themselves at the end, innit?
Yeah.
The Muqtaz.
Yes.
They chained themselves at the end.
Yeah.
So that no one runs away.
So this, brothers, when you think about this, if you come across these guys, you come across these people, if they're going to fight you, fight them. Stand firm. Don't back off. You have the right to self-defense in law and in Islam, in every law. You have the right to defend yourself proportionately. Doesn't mean like if he hits you, you stick a knife in him. No. If he hits you, you hit him back, knock him down. But when you're able to speak to that person, show him that you're dignified, showing that you're a person of honor, show him that you're a person of faith, of Islam. And that will, my brothers, allow, this is what Allah says in the Quran, idfa billati hiya ahsan. Respond with, hit back with that which is better. فَإِذَا الَّذِي بَيْنَكَ وَبَيْنَهُ عَدَاوَةٌ. So that between him and you, there is animosity, كَأَنَّهُ وَلِيٌّ حَمِيمٌ. And he becomes like a close friend to you. And that's why I bring you back to, there's Guantanamo soldiers who in the beginning abused us, they stripped us naked, they beat us, they kicked us, they spat upon us, they cursed Islam. They cursed Islam. They tore the Quran and threw it into the toilet. Said, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. Imagine that. So that, my brothers, inshallah, is my message to you.
We have to attack the ratio.
They call it public order policing. So like policing crowds, there's a science behind it. There's a science and a technique behind it, and it's deeper than maybe people think face value.
I started catching myself because I noticed the way I talk is very, like what you're saying, in the middle, right? So I catch myself using words like maybe, could be, yeah?
Yeah.
And I realized that YouTubers that make it big do not talk like that.
Forget even YouTube, bro. That happens within just our relationships with people.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I go into a situation in my mind. I'm like, okay, I'm not going to argue. I'm going to say my piece. I'm going to leave, right? And then I say my piece, and then they say their piece, however long it takes. And then suddenly, I've just picked out 3 things they've said there that are completely false. If I leave it unchecked, everyone that hears this is going to think that they're right.
Yes,
Yeah.
I was not wrong when I said his whole channel is reactions. The only exception is I remember he did that whole series, which was Londonia, you know, that poem that was written. And he basically went through each thing. But his ratio is approximately, 9-to-1. One video being something he's like teaching and 9 being reactions. Yeah. Okay, I'm currently observing what happens.
We have never had an episode where we've just spontaneously recorded and not had anything to talk about, have we?
Probably.
No, I can't recall. We've had 170, this is 178. I like what you've done with your mustache because I accidentally did that earlier.
You still have one.
I know, but like I did it from like this side and then I cut no, this is where I cut myself, but this is where I did it and I was like, ugh.
I can't be bothered, bro. I just got rid of it.
You know, when I do that, I look like Abraham Lincoln, bro. You mean you don't look like Abraham Lincoln, but then I think I look like Abraham
I'm
Lincoln.
trying to imagine this. Crash Bandicoot.
Oh god, yeah, I've got all sorts of video game memorabilia dotted around my house. Right, I wanted to put this video on because it's been sitting in my bookmarks for ages. I'm just gonna get your initial reaction.
Okay.
Share tab audio. Can you see my Twitter screen?
Yeah.
Right.
Maybe his brother.
I don't know what that is. I don't know what the context of this is, but
Okay.
Here we go.
Yeah.
As a Muslim of Pakistani descent who is also a religious Salafi, I have finally accepted the ideology of Zionism, which I believe to be based on peace, acceptance, and dialogue.
Nice. Nice. Right, I want your hot take on that.
I think this guy, He was trying to get to the UK, right? But he got picked up on his way to Greece. And they're like, look, and accidentally, like, usually a Greek ship would pick him up, but this time it was an Israeli one. So they're like, look, you look British, Pakistani, Salafi. Can you make this quick video and we won't, like, send you to jail or drown you? He's like, yo, I'm down.
Oh, subhanAllah. It's sad, isn't it? But there's something to be said about that kind of inferiority complex. I mean, I don't know if you've seen the news in relation to all these masajid. I say all of them, but a few masajid popping up, singing the national anthem after the Queen's funeral, singing God Save the King in the masjid, and getting little kids to join in, and making it all formal and stuff.
Maybe they mean like, may Allah guide the king to Islam and therefore save him.
Maybe it's an intention thing. Maybe before the camera crew came in, they were like, listen, okay, basically everybody rectify your intentions. We're asking for salvation for the king so that he be guided. That's your intentions, right? Good. Okay, cameras rolling, let's go.
How would they react to that? If you were, obviously it's not the anthem right anymore, but what if the cameras came in and then you're like making dua and you say, may Allah guide the king to Islam, and let's just leave it at that, let's keep it a bit vanilla. Like, do you think that would be like a controversy?
Yeah, if you were that on the nose with it, definitely.
Really?
Yeah. But then if you said, may God guide the king to the straight path, it'd be a bit more vague. A bit more win-win scenario. Like, if you're going to play that it's a performance. Like, it's a performance. Let's just be real about it. If you're going to do the performance thing, then at least, walk the fine line. Not even the fine line. Just use some initiative. But we don't know what happens behind the scenes. Like, organized masjids have and leaders of masjids have a big responsibility to protect and serve their community, right? And we don't know what pressures are behind closed doors, and we don't know, maybe by doing this they've avoided a greater harm. Allah knows best. Like, make excuses for your masajid and their leaders and stuff. I saw a petition going around for a particular imam who partook in one of these sort of events. Then the petition was to remove him from the masjid. I was just like, okay. I'm sure he's benefited the whole community in many ways prior. Do we remove someone? I don't know. I think
ultimately, like, it's not right. It's probably not right for someone, 200 miles away to have a say in that.
Yeah.
Like, if you don't know the guy, you only have seen this one negative thing from him, right? But you don't know the rest. You don't know what he's like. You don't know what he's usually doing. You don't know the good he's done. You don't know the context of why he did that. But definitely someone local could bring it up with him and maybe hold him to account. But just this idea of like everyone all around the country or the world or whatever trying to say he should be removed, that's, what I mean?
Cancel culture. This is a nice little topic. Muslim cancel culture. I'll tell you why. There's a few things that's happened recently.
Okay.
We've got this, for example, and Muslims getting cancelled for partaking in this activity. We also have the I don't want to say violence, the tensions, the whatever in Leicester between Muslims and Hindutva sort of right-wing Hindu nationals. And there is some cancellations going on there in relation to how Muslims are behaving, but and how obviously they're behaving, the nationalists. But we observe ourselves and we critique ourselves first so we can better ourselves. And also, like, God, there is this clip floating. If I can find it, I feel like I should find it, of Muhammad Hijab turning up, and then he goes up to this reporter and he's like, oh, do you want to interview me? They're like, who are you? He's like, I'm a YouTuber. And then they're like, no thanks, it's fine. As well as other stuff. So like there's a long video, but there's another part of that video, subhanAllah, where him and Ali Dawa show up to one of these protests or confrontations,
Rallies.
or whatever. Yeah, that's it. That's a good word. And he starts giving a speech, right, on the megaphone, and then people start shouting at him, telling him to go away. People from the Muslims, yani, telling him to go away, etc. And then there's a bit of a kerfuffle going on, and blah blah blah, like back and forth. Some brothers supporting him, some brothers aren't. And then at one point, one of the brothers, you can hear someone saying, after he leaves, he basically gets pressured to leave. And then you can hear one of the brothers saying, "Oh, get Abu Taymiyyah, who's standing close by. He's from Leicester. So it became like, how can you come to our ends and then start speaking for us and doing this thing for us? Yeah. And then there was another thing I heard in those crowds of this video of where like people were critiquing Ali Dawah for turning up, and they're essentially claiming that he came just for clout, yani coming for views and coming for this. And his argument was like, think good of me, I've come here to cover this, to get you guys a bit more exposure so the world knows what's going on here, because the BBC and etc aren't reporting on it. And yeah, rightfully so, they weren't reporting on it up until maybe after the funeral had finished. Do you know what I mean? That's when it started hitting the news mainstream.
Oh, is the funeral yesterday or something?
It happened on the 19th. So even in my organization, like for those 10 days, any social media stuff had to be like only emergency stuff. You couldn't share anything other than either emergency stuff or stuff to do with the Queen and that. So I can imagine that messaging went out across loads of different organizations, including the news. I'm sure the BBC and all these major news programs were just covering the funeral and stuff. So yeah, I get that. But what I've listed out now is the Muhammad hijab thing, the Ali Dawah thing, this, and the behavior of some Muslims in these events is kind of, how do we react to these things? Like there's this cancellation feeling. Like I know that I've felt, and I, especially in my group chats and stuff, I recognize that I was being very harsh with some of those brothers that were out in Leicester. I really felt like I was. Maybe
you mean the ones like rallying?
Yeah, because so I'll tell you what my gut feeling, what happened, and whether I was right or wrong is up for everyone else to decide. But when I saw them dressed like that, and I saw dressed like that, yani hoodies, balaclavas, face masks, puffer jackets, that kind of thing. Especially when I saw the altercation sort of between some of them and some of the brothers there, and like Muhammad hijab, for example, and all this stuff. And then I could hear this whole postcode kind of stuff, like, oh, you're not from here, why are you speaking for us, kind of thing. I just found it a bit jahil, bro, and I found it like that's not a good image to paint of us. However, I tried to contextualize that behavior, and then I thought, okay, well, the allegation is that these are Muslims from this area. These other extremist Hindus came and turned up, provoked them, and he assaulted Muslims, etc. So these brothers rightfully came out as a show of force, as a show of unity, as a show of strength. Like, you can't mess with our community, we're here. So I get that, but at the same time, like, you've still got these feelings of like, oh, are they making the situation worse? Are they not? And at the end of the day, I'm I'm an armchair commentator, aren't I? I'm not out there, and I wouldn't know what it feels like. But I'm just assessing how I deal with these things. Like, have you seen any of this stuff? Have you had any feelings?
That is actually a legitimate question to ask.
It is, bro. You probably haven't, have you?
No, I didn't have strong feelings, but I saw all of a sudden like Muhammad hijab uploaded like 3 different videos all around this topic.
Yeah.
And I saw what you're talking about, right? Where he turned up, and then honestly, I you're saying that guy said, like, who are you, or like, where, you're not from here, or whatever. Yeah. Well, I felt that 100%.
Yeah, I can understand that. And also there's going to be conflicting reasoning. I think that's why it's important to break down everybody's intentions and what possible excuses there are for everyone. Because you could also argue, like, you could say, oh, there's an element of, I don't want to call it clout chasing, but you know what I'm trying to say. Like, there's an element of,
well, it's a big deal, and so you got to go and get the views. If you're gonna,
it could be.
If you're gonna be a YouTuber, what else would you do? This is exactly what you got to do if you're a YouTuber,
especially if it's especially if it's with Muslims and that.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I think of YouTube like my YouTube, I see it as a business, right? So I don't, maybe I wouldn't have this clash of intentions per se, but yeah, I guess when you have a dawah, supposed to be strictly dawah channel and stuff, you would have to think a bit deeper about the reason. You don't just get views for the sake of views, basically. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, but it depends. Like I said, getting views is fine if your intention is to get views for a good reason, isn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So, you know, you could be like, as he said, and I'm not saying I disagree with him. You know, we're here to cover it because it's not being covered and we want to get your message out. That's fine as well. And also you could then flip it on its head and say, well, there's partisanship and hizbiyya almost with the brothers that are there. Why wouldn't they accept anyone from anyone? We're all Muslim, right? So why is, you know,
no, it's the fact that they're coming and trying to take leadership.
No, I know. I'm flipping it and saying, okay, what's other reason could the person of saying that be saying it for the wrong reason? Like the one who is saying, "Oh, you're not from here."
Yeah,
that also could not be justified. You could unjustify that by saying, well, actually, you should be open and accepting of any Muslim that's coming to support other Muslims, right? And it kind of, and then you could also say, like, you know, some of this, like, I don't know how I feel about walking around and shouting Allahu Akbar as if you're like on the Battle of Badr or something like that. Like, Allah knows best, bro. Allah knows best. Like I said, I'm not making a judgment on people's behavior. It's just I'm openly speaking about the emotions that run through my mind as an observer, right?
Yeah.
And it's, you know, it's just, I don't know. Maybe I think one of the things is also, like, although I probably pretended to be a roadman years ago, I definitely don't. You know, I've definitely come to learn that I'm not that guy, right? And I'll say that proudly, right? But like seeing some of that, it obviously puts a weird feeling in my mind. Is like, is that what masculinity is? Is that what Islamic masculinity is? You know, there were some elders there. There were some older gentlemen there that clearly, you know, they were still wearing their thobes and still wearing, you know, their faces were uncovered, etc. They're wearing they probably wear that every day. But then you could see there was people that were dressed up, ready for a fight. You know, they had boxing gloves on. You could see the MMA sort of gloves with the straps. I could see that in the crowd. Hoods up, face masks on, matching face masks for some of them. Like, and it just reminded me of like when the acts would get ready for a fight kind of thing. But at the same time, you know, we're flipping it back and forth. At the same time, there could have been a fight. They could have got jumped. They could have, do you know what I mean? It reminded me a little bit of when the EDL came to town here. We had a lot of the acts that were kind of a bit flaky with the masjid all showed up for this because they knew, oh yeah, we're going to rep Islam and stuff. And they were all ready for a fight when the police had gone. You know what I mean? They were all waiting to hopefully grab an EDL member. So it's kind of like that. And I know that when you look at all this media that Muslims post, whether it's the YouTube videos, whether it's the Twitter posts and stuff, we're highlighting the Muslim victims that are in this sort of debacle, right? But we'd be remiss to ignore that, there is definitely going to be some acts that are out there making some issues, jumping some people that do you know what I mean? Making bad decisions, because this is what a folder is when there's no leadership, right?
Yeah.
Because when someone steps up and comes and speaks and tries to give a good message, which I think his intention was, and then you have people screaming, "Who are you?" It's kind of like, well, yeah. There's a mixed bag there, and you can imagine when there's no leadership, then you'd expect someone to elect a leader, right? What do you think about all of that kind of stuff?
You know, I was thinking about all the masks and balaclavas and stuff. I was like, damn straight, I'd be wearing that if I was there, because
of course, practical.
I don't want the media to see me there. You know,
don't want your boss.
Yeah, seriously, man. So it's practical, even if there might be other reasons or there's a culture associated with it. But there's a very good reason to wear a mask.
100%.
And hoodies, I mean, bro, like everyone wears hoodies. I'm kind of surprised. You know, when I go to the UK, like the clothing is very casual.
Yeah.
People wear tracksuits so much. I'm just like, for me, that's a bit like, respect yourself. It's a bit like, okay, you wear tracksuit now and then, you wear it when you're exercising or whatever, but to wear that often, I feel like it's not tidy, you know. But in the UK, everyone's wearing hoodies all the time, you know. So that could be a reason that they're wearing that. And yeah, again, like cover your face, cover your hair, like cover, you know. I think that makes sense. And then the fact that they're ready for a fight, I think, I mean, you need to clarify for me, because I don't fully know, like, why, what was the issue? Like, what was the first thing that even happened?
Well, this is where there's mixed reportings. At the end of the day, what I can say for sure is this is a exportation of the issues that are happening in India, the persecution of the Muslims in India, in relation to the Hindutva extremist parties, RSS, these kind of words I get thrown around. I'm not deep on that sort of, you know, knowledge of that, but that issue and the persecution there, and the right-wing nationalism and the calls to exterminate Muslims and demolish Muslims' homes and essentially just beat up random Muslims on the street, kill them, slaughter them, that kind of thing. That which I see daily, and may Allah protect the Muslims in India and the rest of the world. That rhetoric from those political figures and groups has exported itself to this community.
And how did it manifest?
Now, there have been, like today's the 21st of September, we're recording this, there has been, I've seen, like, I saw some Muslims going to protest outside of, similar of these groups, they at least look the same, protest outside of particular places of worship or Hindu centers that have invited or are linked to these hate speakers or
in India they've invited them.
No, maybe they've invited them, or maybe they have their own representation here. I don't know the details, but
what was the trigger,
how it started? I've seen stuff about cricket, I've seen stuff about, you know, I don't know. All I know, the earliest thing I saw was just literally a march. Actually, the earliest thing I saw was a march of from the what do I want to call them? Hindutva. That's the word I see. It could be wrong, but that's what I'm seeing. A march where a lot of they looked young, they looked similar dress, bro, like balaclavas, hoodies, that kind of thing. They were marching and shouting at some slogans which were allegedly insightful towards Muslims and stuff like that. They were marching in front of Muslim areas and masajid, and actually being escorted by police to facilitate that march, which isn't, people think, oh, that's, how could they do that? But police do that all the time. Who do you think facilitates EDL marches? It's the police. It's the same thing. They just make that application. They're going to do it anyway. The argument is they're going to do it with or without the police. So would you rather the police there than not there?
Well, it's not illegal or anything, is it?
Which it's to facilitate public safety. Because if the police aren't there, then actually they're going to get way more aggressive, and the people that are watching are going to get aggressive, and it's going to turn into a brawl, and people are going to get hurt, and people are going to get stabbed, and people are going to get all sorts. But at least if the police are there to facilitate it, or facilitate it under quotations, then actually it's a deterrent for both sides to escalate.
Let them vent, let them get it out.
Yeah, it's pretty much.
Okay. I mean, so they didn't like attack anyone in the process of
I don't know about within those actual face-offs, but there was definitely attacks. There was definitely both sides. You know, when I say both sides, I mean, I think the first was, Allah knows best. I don't even want to say. I've just seen claims of both sides.
So it's a lot of like guessing right now, I guess.
Yeah, it's just a bit messy.
If there was a threat of violence towards Muslims, then I guess it makes sense that these Muslims, they turn up ready to not just to defend themselves or other Muslims, but show up, to intimidate. You know what I mean? Yeah. To intimidate, even if you're not going to do anything, but just to be there. But obviously, maybe ideally, it would be like, okay, let's have a patrol. Let's set up a patrol so that there's no areas where, a Muslim might be walking and then get picked on or something, right?
Yeah, 100%.
Like that would be ideal, I guess, but that's expecting a lot. So yeah, in that sense, like, yeah, why not? In terms of you got to show intimidation, I suppose, even if you're not going to use violence, but just to show like, yes, we're here. And if you decide to make a bad choice, then you're going to realize it was a bad choice.
Yeah, I mean, I don't look. I will clarify my position in saying that I don't blame those brothers that are out there for showing up. I don't. What I'm doing is wrestling with those feelings that we all do when we see stuff, especially when we're not there and we're not familiar with it. So I'm openly wrestling with these feelings of saying, this was my initial reaction. My initial reaction was, I don't know, this is going to make things worse, blah, blah, blah. But then I'm trying to obviously rationalize those thoughts by saying, well, actually, what would happen if I was there? And what would happen if, yesterday, funnily enough, a true story, I went shopping with my mum and my sister, my mum and my wife, my sister in Islam, my wife. And then there was like some issue going on. Basically, some drunk rando was like beating up people in the shop, and I got involved. And then he he started racially abusing me, and then he got arrested. And he got arrested and taken away. But yeah, there's another case on my plate. That's like I've had a few of those. Gone to court, been awarded compensation because someone shouted something at me. But the law can work in your favor.
What kind of compensation? Monetary?
We'll see. I mean, this one isn't at any stage to go to court yet, but the previous ones, yes, monetary. Although,
what are we talking,
bro? Listen, so I've had like between £100-200 each time, but the problem is, bro, they pay. I was talking to my friends in relation to. Actually, I don't want to show it on the camera because there's a reference number on it. But they pay. So they say, okay, you get awarded £100 compensation. Well, a lot of the people that obviously pay have financial difficulties, right? So they strike a deal where they pay like in increments, but the increments are so few and far between and so minuscule. So like I heard like a £200 award that I've been getting on and off for the past year, and each time it's about £2 to £5 at a time. And it just, I get it. Like and there's been like, I was checking yesterday because my friends were talking to me about this, and I was like, oh wait, for March, April, and May or something like that, it was 3 months that I didn't get anything, and then they started paying like £2 again, and I was just like, I get this, and I just go, well, there's a pint of milk.
Yeah. Some of that Freddo money.
Yeah, unless I want to save it and put it to the side. So anyway, to not sidetrack, there is you can use legislations and laws in your favor to represent the Muslim community, to put a stamp down on that kind of behavior. Even I wasn't affected by it. The officer that was there was like, how are you? Like, oh, I'm going to arrest him for this. Is that all right? Like, are you okay? And I'm like, oh, I'm going abroad like in 2 days. Do I have to deal with this? Like, I don't really care. Like, this is nothing new to me. Do you know what I mean? But then at the same time, I rationalize that, and maybe it's advice for the Muslim community in the West. I rationalize that by saying, hey, that's me, right? I'm a Muslim man, and I'm not really fazed by someone shouting at me. But if my wife was on her own, and that same guy was there, and he shouted at her, she'd be really upset. She'd be intimidated. So sure, it might be a bit of a pain for me to go through that process, but if I can get punishment for him using these laws of these lands, then it deters that kind of behavior for anyone else. It also assists with reporting. So it shows that, oh, look, Islamophobia is on the rise. Maybe we need to do something. Maybe we need to pump money in the masajid to do whatever. I don't know. Whatever it is, either way, it will benefit the Muslim community. It takes some time out of your day, giving a statement and all that stuff. But even if you're not fazed, do something about it for the sake of your Muslim brother and sister that isn't there. That's my opinion on it anyway.
I think going back to the Muhammad hijab thing, I think it would be a good idea to get the attention on it, but not necessarily putting himself or themselves front and center. Like, couldn't you go there and you can film your own commentary of what's going on, but also film anyone else who seems like kind of a leader in that place. Maybe interview those people, ask them what happened, this and that. You know what I mean? Like, rather than taking over, cooperate or just take part. Because I think it's completely legitimate. Like, this is our city. You're coming from outside. Why would you come and take leadership here? Doesn't make any sense.
Although I think that's to play devil's advocate, we obviously don't know. We don't know what We just seen the video, and in the video, actually, he makes a good point before he's cut off. He said that this is a battle of many fronts. It's not just this thing happening in front of us. There's like a media battle. There's an academic battle. There's a discourse.
Yeah, it's just so why does he have to take leadership? That's the only thing.
Well, I don't know if he's overtly done that. I mean, there has been other interviews. I've seen clips that they've put out where they've interviewed people on the scene. One of the brothers, he's an activist, and I've known him on Twitter for ages, but Majid Freeman, I believe his name, or something like that. Yeah, he's there. Like he's been, all the news I've seen. Yeah, all the news I've seen has been from him because that's where he lives and that's where it's coming from. So mostly seen it from him, and I think there was a video where he was interviewed and stuff. So yeah, I think I was mostly disheartened to see, like, you know, like, yeah, the intentions can be, you can guess everybody's intentions, but you can fix that by quickly saying, well, let me just assume the best. And that's what I'm trying to do here. What I'm trying to do here is assuming the best of the brothers that I initially thought, oh, I don't know about that. Or why are they dressed like that? Why are they behaving like that? And then trying to assume the best of, oh, Mohammed Hijab just got basically cancelled by this reporter that didn't really care to interview him. And yeah, you could frame that little excerpt. I don't know if you've seen it. You could frame that saying, "Oh, look, he thought he was popular enough to just get on a BBC whenever he wanted." But then when I actually heard him speak, I realized, well, actually, you could also frame it as, "Look, they don't even want to speak to Muslims. They don't want to speak to Muslims about the situation. They just want to come here and film it in case something kicks off, and then they want that piece of
don't want to humanize."
Yeah, because I didn't see them. They were just like, she goes, "Oh yeah, I'm just here to film." But she's standing there next to a cameraman, so really you're there to actually commentate when it kicks off, so you can be like, oh, look at these brown boys beating up each other, because that's what it is, right? So yeah, everything can be framed in a positive light. And going even all the way back to the beginning of this conversation, we spoke about the Imam. Yeah, like, we don't know what pressures are behind the scenes to, you know, like, what do we do here? Do we do it? Do we not? Do we take a stand? Do we not? Are we going to affect our entire community? Like, these are big debates, and until you're a leader of a whole community, you don't know. I'm not saying what they did was right. I'm just saying there are always subtleties and nuances to a lot of situations at face value that we completely cancel people for, right? And it's just good to think and do a bit.
You know, sometimes there are, not sometimes, often, there are certain people that do things that we would disagree with. We would even say with Islamic proofs that it's wrong what they did.
Yeah.
But when you look at the macro, it helps the cause. And and also in the dawah, you have certain figures who are very extreme, you could say, take a very extreme approach to things. And you would say, yeah, that's extreme. We should be more balanced than that. Should be more nuanced than that. But what the effect that they have is sometimes they pull the narrative in a direction it wouldn't normally go, which is a positive direction, or they keep certain people on their toes, right? And the methods they might employ is like not the best, and like literally, logically, objectively, you can say, yeah, it's wrong. Doing that is wrong, yeah. But overall, it kind of helps the cause.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, 100%. I mean, we all learn from mistakes, don't we? It's on one side, you could say that mistakes are the ammunition for your enemy, and on the other side, you could say, yeah, but we all learn from mistakes, and we improve and we get better from mistakes. It's just difficult as a collective to learn from mistakes. I think that's the hard thing, because there's always going to be groups of people, and I think what does mitigate a lot of this sort of stuff is leadership, is someone stepping up to the plate. So in this example, if it was Mohammed Hijab, if it was someone else, or I don't know, because there's also that dynamic of like, okay, the elders that are there, which are the leaders, well, there's an element of, well, the young people don't listen to the elders. Because, do you know what I mean? If the elder comes up and says, listen, this is what I believe we need to do, right, get off the streets because we're just antagonizing them now. The police are dealing with them now. No. Get on the streets now. We have to.
Yeah.
And yes, there's going to be pockets of people that are after a fight. And actually, there's one of the videos I saw. Sorry, I got a random email. Distracted there. One of the videos I saw was like the police grabbing, I think, a Muslim guy from the crowd and basically trying to drag him away. And what I've realized is people don't necessarily know this about, what's the word? they call it public order policing. So like policing crowds, there's a science behind it. There's a science and a technique behind it, and it's deeper than maybe people think face value. I mean, yeah, you've got the formations but there's also something where I can't remember the name for it, but they basically identify agitators. So they'll color code a crowd almost, and they'll monitor crowd dynamics. And there's a whole science about crowd dynamics. In fact, there's even like sociologists and anthropologists that study this stuff. Because when the Queen's funeral was happening and there was a queue, they sent anthropologists and stuff to basically study all of this because it was such a phenomenon. So what I think what happened is like there was an agitator within that crowd who was trying to basically get people to just get the Muslims to go over there and push through and stuff. And actually at one point you see all the police lined up. Muhammad Hijab is actually standing with the police with his back towards the police, trying to get everyone to take 4 steps back. Now, once again, yeah, you've got that whole, well, he's stepping in to kind of take leadership and no Muslims, everybody get back. But on the other hand, he's also the tallest and largest person there. And if anyone's going to listen to him, if they're going to listen to anyone, you might think it'd be him. But then you can clearly see somebody in that crowd is like, no, come on, let's just go. Like trying to push the incite or whatever you want to call it, escalate the situation. Then that one individual gets grabbed up by police. They try and drag him away, whilst Muslims then realize, oh no, and they drag him back in, and that's what starts an escalation. So yeah, it's messy, but there's always nuances to all of these things, because you can always look at something, a video or whatever, and just think, this is chaos, or this is, what is this, or what are the Muslims doing, or what are the police doing, or why is this happening, and it's just speaking through it and dissecting it bit by bit, because that's the only way you're going to survive in this era of 30-second clips with no context, right?
Yeah. That's what I was going to say. This is I guess another example or manifestation perhaps of lack of leadership and lack of listening to leaders, right? Because what you would hope is that something like this happens anywhere, really. It should be that there is someone that is, that we know locally who is like, yeah, I know this guy and I respect him, I'm going to listen to him. You know what I mean? And yeah, part of the problem is the culture in the UK is not ready to listen to elders. So you might take that and say, well, it could be someone younger. Not young, maybe, but younger, but then again, there's probably the issue that maybe a lot of these guys who are there, maybe they don't really even go to the masjid much, so they don't know if a leader from the masjid, they might not know who he is. So it's quite tricky, because I guess, previously, if you're in a smaller kind of settlement, you kind of know everyone and these leader figures, and I guess there's a lot more, how do you say it, structure to societies back then. Now it's more all about freedom and individuals rather than a community kind of thing. But it's very important, bro. Like, even if you travel with 3 people, you need an emir, right? And you need to obey the emir. So this is part of our tradition, and ideally, we would have that set up, right? There is a leader, we listen to the leader whether we like it or not, and of course the leader would be held to account as well in terms of the decisions. So let's say he was like, yeah, let's just go home, and then they listen, but then someone gets attacked later, then of course that's going to be on him, right? That's how it works as a leader. So that is really a part of the solution as Muslims, is to follow that tradition of ours of having leaders firstly, and then following those leaders.
It's I suppose the issue that we have is like you mentioned. I mean, the Muslims in the masjid, or Muslims that are practicing, etc., the ones that you're going to find in the masjid, they're going to be the people like 95% of the time they're linked to the masjid, 95% of the time they're practicing their religion, etc., etc. But then protests that are linked with Muslims, well, you're going to have a mixed bag of everyone and anyone. You're going to have someone who even vaguely identifies as Muslim turning up because something gets ignited in them, which is a sign of Iman that that's what happened to me, subhanAllah. Like, when I wasn't practicing, I didn't know anything about Islam. I saw the EDL protest and I was like, oh, they're protesting against Muslims. I'm going to go to this. I just happened. That led me on a path.
Did you go with the mask and hoodie?
No, bro, I went with like looking like a 17-year-old sort of, I don't know. I was going to say some sort of, something like that. Like, yeah, definitely wearing some sort of military jacket or something, but not military like like I was joining military. It was more of like a fashion kind of thing. Anyway, that's another story for another day. But no, I was one of those people actually. SubhanAllah. Like I just showed up to this thing because I was curious.
Yes,
and then I got sucked into that environment where there was all these acts of a mixed variety that were there, visibly mixed variety, you know, and they were like shouting, and then I just got sucked into that environment, and boom, there you go. But on the plus side, it kind of goes back to you saying, maybe what I did then was wrong. But actually, the benefit that came out of it was I went to the masjid for like the first time, and I met these brothers, and it led me on a path of, you know, screw the EDL. This is the response. You know, like actually being proud about my faith, and by practicing it, not just by showing up. That was my response. So, it's a journey, isn't it? And for all these brothers, it's a journey. They'll come out of that feeling more Muslim in a way.
Inshallah,
you know, feeling pride for who they are. Like, they're, you know, it happens because when society marginalizes you, you either let it just take over and be like, okay, I'm not going to be Muslim anymore, like give in to the pressure, or double down and get even further into Islam and be like, no, I am Muslim. You know what? I am going to grow my beard. Actually, I do care about this uncle that was just assaulted, or this sister that was, do you know what I mean? That passion gets sparked up again. So sometimes it takes these difficult times to
I guess that's
back to the deen.
It goes the same way with the, I don't know, those cringy humming 30-second iman boosters, right? We hate them, but some people might, you know, be pushed in a good direction from them.
Yeah, definitely. Well, you know, it's something to say actually about the other end, like I said, the watering down. I mean, what video did we just watch at the beginning of this episode? Like, something's got to be said for those that everything is criticism. And similarly, how I started this by identifying the feeling of critiquing these people, these incidents. Did I critique the extremists as much as I critiqued the Muslims? I didn't. Like, I know for a fact, bro, the thoughts that were going through my head when I saw all this stuff was like, well, yeah, the extremist Hindutva lot, well, yeah, that's a given. But let me critique the Muslims right now.
Yeah,
do you know what I mean? Like,
true.
that's what I fell into. And we do that a lot, I think.
Is that
I know
wrong,
I
do you
definitely
think?
do. Huh?
Do you think that's wrong?
I think I have to be aware that I'm doing it, right? Because I think we all do that. For example, Dawah scene. The Dawah scene is a mess on YouTube. It is just messy.
It is, yeah.
This every back and forth, and there's a few brothers that engage in it a lot, and there's a lot of brothers that don't, right? But then I look at it and I'm like, well, that's just what I'm doing, but on a video. Those thoughts
Is it
that I'm
really?
thinking. It could be, but once again, it's just about. Maybe my advice is to just assess yourself, assess why you're doing things, what you're saying, and if you're saying has holes in it, in terms of intention, in terms of lack of making excuses, like really sit down and assess, because I'm sure you've been in that environment, and I've definitely been in that environment where it's like something's happened, let's make a video about it. You know, we've dabbled in that video content stuff. We've dabbled in making dawah videos. We've dabbled in these things. Certainly, Muslim youth movement, the videos that I used to put out there with the team were immediate responses to something that would have just happened. You know, when I did like the nightclub video, it was because a lot of my friends in my local area were about to go to a nightclub, so I needed to get this video out for them. Like 90% of those videos at the time, because there was no YouTube scene like there is now, a lot of those videos were reactive to things that were happening around me, because the messaging was more for the people that were around me, as opposed to now you've got messaging going out to things that are happening on the other side of the world, right? So this person just put up this video refuting this. Well, actually, no, I just caught him doing this. I got receipts, check the WhatsApp, like that kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
But it does make us look messy on a larger scale.
Yeah, it's kind of disappointing, man, to be honest. Like, of course, like now that I'm putting more and more videos out, I need to think about this, because there is an element of responding to people or responding to events, you could say. You know, it gets you up there, and yeah, I will use that. I used that with the Badr Club thing, right? The Badr Club thing was quite genuine for me though, because I was like passionate about this, this culture of like anti kind of courses culture. But no doubt I'm going to do videos where I'm not as genuinely passionate about it. But it's, I guess when it's within my domain, like Muslim men's issue, then I will make a video about it. But it's tricky because for me, the thing I've been thinking about over the last week is like, what about when it comes to the Islamic side of things, the Islamic knowledge, when you start saying things and maybe you want to back what you're saying up with Islam, with Quran and Sunnah, but did you read the tafsir of that? Okay, now did you read 5 different tafsir of that so you could check like that's not like a one-off opinion? And that stuff starts taking you longer to make the video, and the video has to go out quickly and all of that. So I think right now, like, inshallah, I'm quite safe because, when I use Islam, like Quran and Sunnah, I'm using very general stuff that I don't think you can really argue with. But if it comes down to like some deep, like if you start going into Aqidah and I need to keep away from that. But I'm sure I can see there's gonna be issues. It's gonna be tempting or whatever, right? Because I last week Jummah khutbah was about this, speaking about Allah without knowledge, and it's a very, very serious issue. So I just hope that even what I do in the podcast is the same kind of thing. That I hope, like what I'm saying, I'm never giving fatwa. I'm never giving. I guess I am giving interpretations, but I don't consider it interpretations. I consider it more just a reflection, and hopefully the people listening, they know that it's a reflection. Sometimes it's tafsir. If it's tafsir and I've read it, I'll say it, right? But we got to keep ourselves in check always with that. But yeah, it's very tempting. But one thing I inshallah will not get into is arguing with people via video reactions in terms of like back and forth and making it personal. I do have a video that I'm going to put out, and it does talk about a project of somebody's, yes, but the way I think about that, and I guess it might evolve over time how I think about this, but I'm like, look, I'm not going to mention the guy by name, although people will know probably who it is. And I'm just going to talk about the idea. I'm going to talk about the project. I'm going to talk about the concept rather than the person or, the intentions behind it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think that's safer, hopefully, and that makes it less personal. And we can talk about things. I think that's where this goes wrong. It's like, oh, he said this and he did that and he thinks this and he acted like that. I guess a bit like what we're saying with Muhammad Hijab, the way he walked up was like that, right? I said that just now.
You did say that.
I did say that. So I guess avoiding those kind of things and just being more like, well, let's talk generally. Let's talk about, okay, if something like this kicks off in Leicester, what would be good, or blah, blah, blah. And hopefully the person being critiqued, because critiquing is fine. If you put yourself out there publicly, you're going to get critiqued. It's no problem. But you don't want to make them feel attacked and then they feel they have to guard their honor, And anyway, the honor of the Muslim is haram, right? So you shouldn't even be going into people's honor. If it goes across that line, then you've really crossed the line. That's haram, yani. So
yeah. Is that fatwa? That's
no, I actually say that with confidence because I just read the explanation of a hadith and it was talking about that. So that's why I said that with confidence. Another day when I've forgotten that, I won't be saying that, hopefully.
No, sure. The thing is, bro, like you said, maybe you're ramping it up again. And actually, even when you did videos before, the scene wasn't like it is now. But it is a slippery slope to cancellation territory because let's say you did that Andrew Tate video, which you did do, right? And imagine a Muslim supporter of his does a direct video response to you, basically ripping to shreds everything you've said point by point.
Yeah.
And they've got a following and they've got an audience, and then their audience kind of I don't know, infects your comment section, your tweets, your stuff like that. And then like you just sit there and think, well, no, he just completely misquoted me here. No, that's not right. He lied about me there. If I don't respond to this, everyone's going to think that what You know,
That's
oh,
true.
he just claimed that I wrote something 2 years ago, but I didn't. That wasn't me. That was. Do you know what I'm trying to say? And suddenly you do get sucked into it because it becomes personal, because they might make a mistake or they might frame something in a particular way or misunderstand something. And suddenly this false allegation is now circulating unchecked.
Yeah. Yes.
Because you can never stop. Like that's
So
the
what's
problem
the
with
solution?
forget even YouTube, bro. That happens within just our relationships with people. You know, I go into a situation in my mind. I'm like, okay, I'm not going to argue. I'm going to say my piece. I'm going to leave. Right. And then I say my piece, and then they say their piece, however long it takes. And then suddenly I've just picked out 3 things they've said there that are completely false. If I leave it unchecked, everyone that hears this is going to think that they're right because I didn't challenge. Well, no. You can't say that. Wait a sec. What you said here was, and then boom, 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 boom. You are sucked into it. So I think it's a privilege, and alhamdulillah, may Allah keep it that way, that you can say the things you're saying now. But there have been people greater and more knowledgeable than us and more patient than us that have been sucked into this. And yes, on one hand, you've got the narration of the Prophet ﷺ in relation to leaving off an argument, even if you're right, and being promised a house in paradise for that. And it's like, well, do I just delete my ego, whatever they say, even if it's wrong, Allah knows, and walk away from this? But you know how tough that is when your ego is, in your reputation is at stake. You know, so I've seen, how many videos have I seen of back and forths where one of the individuals is like, this is the last video I'm doing on this, putting it out there, and then boom, a month later it's like, yo, he just brought up this. I know I said last time was the last time, but I have to do this.
What's the solution,
bro? I think for some people, they leave online world. They do leave the online world. They take a long break. They do something, right? Other people, they continue. They go back and forth until it doesn't really garner any attention anymore, and they've exhausted every point. You know, and then to some people it actually evolves even worse. It moves into other areas. Then suddenly your entire view of that person is a negative one. Whatever they do, you're commenting on it. Whatever they do, that is even you. I mean, this goes back to, and I hate to bring it up again, the Badr Club, which is in the process of changing its name, I believe. It became a thing that the controversy surrounding Imran via other people was so much so to the extent that before any scholars even came out with any sort of criticism, it was like, well, this feels bad, so it must be bad. Oh, it's coming from him, so it must be bad. If I did the Badr Club, I don't think people would have critiqued it as harshly. Do you know what I mean? If I showed up with my beard and my thobe, and I do mind Heist and I talk about the deen and stuff, but now because of this image where I've put a more balanced view of my life, I'm not out here making dawah videos and trying to teach knowledge and stuff, or I've taken a hiatus from that kind of content for so many years that people don't know me for that, you know? But heck, there was critiques when we started the podcast. I remember when we started the podcast, there was people like, why are you doing a podcast? You know? Who are you to do podcasts? Who are you to... Anyway, you can go on forever. So,
actually, you made me realise.
You would get sucked in, bro. You're Algerian. You'll 100% get sucked in. Sorry, bro. It's in your blood.
No, this is important to consider. I
You've
think
had an epiphany.
The thing that I always aspired to is to make your biggest reaction to critiques or just other ideas that you don't believe in, that you don't agree with, you think are wrong, and people need to know about them. Your biggest way of dealing with those is to teach what you think is right. Yeah. And so that should really be, I don't know, 80-90% of your videos. If it goes beyond that, then you know you've been sucked into it, I guess.
Yeah.
But the thing is, in order to not get sucked into that, you probably should never mention names whatsoever, and never even, just talk very generally. Probably talk very generally. Like now I'm even thinking, I'll just say this. The episode we did on Badr Club, right? That was a couple episodes ago. There was a little bit at the end where we talked about, I said, Muhammad Hijab, Ali Dawud, they said this, right? They said, oh, I've got a 1-bedroom flat, I'm fine with it, blah, blah. And I actually got passionate about that, right? So I made a video about it.
Oh, did you?
I made a video about it. Now, in that video, I've planned to actually include what they said in that video.
Oh, you've just leveled up, baby.
Yeah. But now I'm thinking maybe I shouldn't do that, you know, just make the point without. So for example, just to give you solid, maybe what I should do, you tell me what you think. Maybe what I should do is start the video with saying, I heard some brothers saying this and this and this and this. And it's wrong for these reasons. Boom, 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 boom. And then the focus is on the ideas, like what's wrong, why it's wrong, this and that. Not quoting anyone directly.
So let's assume your intention, which I believe, I'm not assuming in a negative way. I mean, your intention initially to make this video was right because you felt there was something incorrect about this perspective and you wanted to address it. But your intention is also that the people that heard that need to listen to this. Okay?
Absolutely,
So the people that heard them say that need to listen to this so I can rectify their thought process. Maybe they've taken that wrong. But then if I don't address it directly, what are the chances of those people finding it? This will just sit in my echo chamber.
No, that's not good though.
What?
Well, there's only one way if you think that way, is to put it right in the title and in the thumbnail.
This is people's justification, isn't it?
Yeah.
And then you've got the added layer.
I don't think I'm like the savior, and if they don't watch my video, they're going to be lost and stuff, yeah? So I think if I make enough of these good, useful videos, then eventually I'll get, like I have like 8,000 subscribers now, I'll get to 10, and I get to 15 and 20, and those guys that maybe heard Ali Dawas being proud of his 1-bedroom flat, and they decided, you know what, I'm not even going to rent a place, we live in a tent, yeah? And I'll be happy with that. Those guys eventually will find my videos, I guess. Maybe that's the way to go about it. Slow and steady wins the race.
I think it's just you're caught between a rock and a hard place, because at the end of the day, you're expecting the people that you make that video for, or those kind of videos for, to have already heard this and you're addressing it, or you're not really landing with anyone that's going to benefit from it because they don't really care and have never really agreed with them anyway and automatically agree with you. It's like that saying where it's like your friends don't need it and your enemies won't believe it. Yeah, and those around you don't need your video, right? And then your enemies won't believe it. It's kind of meaning like you're not going to reach them anyway if you don't. But also
the audience of these guys are like they're so different. There's a very diverse crowd, you know.
I know.
It's not like they're my enemies just because they watch that.
You
know what I mean?
I didn't mean that they're enemies, but it's just the quote.
Yeah.
Was about that, yeah.
So what you're saying, basically, I should put them in the thumbnail and the title and the description. Okay,
no, I'm not saying that. I'm doing a thought experiment with you to show you that actually you are caught between a rock and a hard place.
Yes.
If you don't, you won't reach the people it needs to reach.
Yes.
If you do, you've just exploded a can of worms that actually you won't be able to keep up with. So what I will say though is what you should do is what we're doing now. So how many people make videos in a bubble and they don't consult with anybody? Now, you do sometimes see some of the YouTubers saying, oh, I spoke to my teachers. Well, you need to also speak to someone who actually is very far detached from you.
I spoke to my teachers. I said, how are you? They said, I'm fine. I said, Salam alaikum. And I went and recorded the video.
But the people do that. I think people will say, oh, I spoke to my teachers, and actually they sent a WhatsApp message and the teacher themselves was very busy and they just replied in a WhatsApp text, right?
You're Jewish.
Yeah. I mean, you've got to, if you're about this life, you've got to basically seek those that you think would critique you and you think would be against you. And you think, I don't know how you would do that, but like, teachers are human beings and your friends are human beings, and like I'm your human being. Like I've given you a devil's advocate thing, and maybe if you come to me and say to me, I'm going to do this, play devil's advocate with me, I'm good at doing that. Like I've just tried to do that for this whole episode. So yeah, I've given you what I think at least are the pros and cons, the what ifs, and someone with knowledge, someone who's been in this game before, who can try and and it's no different to the controversies of refutations with the scholars in the past that have like persisted, the echoes of which persist until today. Like with actually, I'm not even going to say who, but like that kind of thing, right?
Yeah. I mean, for them, it's more serious because they feel like it's a moral obligation to warn or correct something. For me, it's like I feel like it might be important, but it's not to that level of
Yeah.
a moral obligation.
But what you don't realize is you could be, let's say it was me and you. We had a different view making videos about each other's points. Well, behind this camera, we're friends and we get on and stuff. But imagine if I have a following or a fan base and then you have a following or a fan base and we've just made them like clash with each other and call each other's names. Do you know what I mean? And we've created a fitna between them when actually our intentions were just about the points, not about what club you support.
I think that comes across in your tone during videos or whatever a lot of the time. I'm trying to think, a good way of approaching this is think about someone that you like, basically copy someone, innit? Like think of someone you like, you respect their path on YouTube. Let's say we're talking about YouTube here. You respect their path and just see what they did and be like, okay, they reached a good audience, good size audience, seemed to have a good impact, and they did it this way. And I still have respect for them after these years. They don't seem to have got caught up in stuff I wouldn't want to get caught up in. So let me take that as a model,
Yeah. You could do. I mean, as soon as you said that, it reminded me of Mufti's video this one time where Mufti has his haters, no doubt, and he was getting it a lot. And every now and again, you hear him kind of mention it, a subtle comment here and there when he's asked a question. And
jealousy and envy.
Yeah. Well, this one time, bro, he basically made a video called "A Critical Dialogue with X Person."
Bro, this video has been popping up on my feed recently.
Yeah. This was 5 years ago, and I remember watching it at the time because I was like deep into this beef.
That was actually a massacre.
Bro, it was an hour and 30 minutes. So Mufti's approach was, I'm going to just put it out in like one whole like movie and just deal with it and then move on, right? I don't think there's been anything like that direct since then.
Yes.
But that was, if there was a definition of I'm going to basically annihilate point by point the issues and address them. That was one of the first sort of long form ones I saw from someone who doesn't necessarily engage in that. There are people that do that 24/7, right?
And you see now, if you look at Mufti's catalogue, it's like less than 1% is that kind of stuff.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. But we all have our biases, don't we? Would I say that if I wasn't someone who was a quote unquote fan of Mufti, right? Would I say that? Would I immediately see that in a negative light? Like, oh look, he literally made a movie criticizing this brother. Yeah, blah 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 blah. We can all do that, and I think we've just got to wear the shoe on the other foot sometimes, and just
thing is, bro, like that's what I'm saying. Mufti has hundreds of thousands, maybe, of hours of material of him teaching ultimately what he believes, not what he doesn't believe, what he believes, what he's learned, and teaching. And I think that's the main thing. Like, no one knows him for that video, no one knows him for that video. They know him for the good stuff he's teaching. I think was it Abu Hanifa? No. I remember it being Imam Malik. He said the best way to basically fight bid'ah is to teach sunnah. Yeah,
I like that.
It's to teach and spread sunnah. So, what I mean? Like, this is the thing when the ratio gets out of whack. On the flip side, like, look at Muhammad Hijab's channel. His whole channel is pretty much reactions. Is that not true?
Wow,
and that's why
he made such a major statement. We're going to have to send him this video directly just so he can address all these points and then you become famous.
Yeah, I mean, I would hope, bro, like, I did mention him by name a few times, and I would hope, like, either maybe he'll just, ignore it, or, like, basically what I would hope that we could actually discuss, and it's not personal, and it's like, well, I would actually do it this way and I would do it that way, rather than, oh, you did this, therefore you're wrong, therefore you're bad, therefore this, therefore, I mean, that's what I always hoped I would be, that type of person, you know what I mean?
Let's bring him on, bro. Let's bring him on.
Yeah, possibly. I mean,
I don't know.
He was on Islam Tennessee podcast, and Dr. Salman tried to discuss some of this stuff with him. It was a very confrontational conversation, very, Yeah, I think Muhammad Hijab was in some kind of mood that day or something, you know. The way
You're making all the statements today, aren't you? You just get a shovel and you're just digging it.
Yeah, probably am. Let me see. I'm just on his channel, right? So he's got like a couple videos about Salman Rushdie. Those are like reaction videos. Then he's got Andrew Tate reaction, you could say. Jordan Peterson's Inner Struggle, again, reaction to Jordan Peterson. Honest Tea Talk, couple of those, reaction. Andrew
Mind
Tate
Heist.
and Imran. Yeah, next, coming up next. Norway Quran Burner. So all his videos are reactions. Yes,
Yeah.
I was not wrong when I said his whole channel is reactions. The only exception is I remember he did that whole series, which was Londonía, you know, that poem that was written, and he basically went through each thing. But his ratio is approximately, 9-1. One video being something he's like teaching, and 9 being reactions. Yeah.
I mean, one could argue that Londonía was basically a grandiose reaction to each and every sect or whatever or group.
Potentially, yeah.
One could
But
argue, 'cause-
there is something to be said about teaching via examples and case studies.
yeah.
I do believe that. It's like, imagine I tried to refute the concepts that Andrew Tate, manifests in his behavior, versus saying, Andrew Tate does this, it's bad. It's much easier to understand and swallow.
I think it'll be worth noting, actually, your perspective. What kind of... So when it comes to the Muslim content creation, whatever's put out there, what do you consume? What do you think you consume the most of? Just so we know where your frame of mind is.
Okay, yeah, it's a good exercise. Are you saying by Muslims?
Yeah.
Oh,
So is it this reaction
not
stuff?
much, bro.
Is it dawah stuff? Is it actual like lectures? What is it?
Bro, let me look at my history, because I don't think I consume much of this at all. Like, okay, today
Really?
I went through, just a few minutes of, what's his name? Sheikh, Dr. Shadi al-Masri, talking to Dr. Hatim. But that was a few minutes. Anything else? Wallah, not much by Muslims. I watched this, a bit of the thing we were discussing, the whole Muhammad Hijab in Leicester. Watched a bit of that. It's not much at all, bro. There's not much. Gabriel Romani, again, that was like a minute or two of that video. Wasn't that interested in it. So, yeah, I do not consume much of this. I might watch, Middle Nation if the topic seems interesting.
So it's not like you're going to seek stuff out. So like, I'm wondering if there are people that like go, I'm going to get my dose of Deen today, and they go, I'm going to click on this reaction video, or click on this, or click on that. Because, for me,
that wouldn't be good, would it? Yeah.
Yeah, for me, I find like if I'm like, okay, driving in the car, and I'm like, I'm going to listen to something beneficial. 9 times out of 10, I put a Mufti Q&A video on, like just, we're going to do a Q&A thing. And I just listen to that, because especially if I'm doing something at the same time, right? And I think I just find myself learning a lot from just Q&As. There's a lot of nuggets that you can get out of that, because the situations, number one, there's a situation of like people's struggles in the dunya are quite tough, and it makes you appreciate what you've got and the issues that you've got compared to others. Number two, there are principles and nuances in how questions are answered pertaining to different situations that you can also, pick out from there. And generally, there's also winding it within all of these Q&As is just knowledge. Whether it's evidence here, a hadith there, an example, an ayah. So generally, that's mostly probably what I consume, unless I've got a series or something that's going alongside that. Yeah. But it's not to say that when something has got a clickbait title, I don't click on it. And I think we've all got to a point now where we know it's clickbait and we click on it anyway. Like, I know that's clickbait, but let me see how clickbait it is. Because the curiosity of how clickbait it is what actually gets me, not the clickbait
thing.
Yeah, it's not like you won't believe what this guy did. It's well, am I really not going to believe it? Like, come on, let me see.
Like, is it wild or wild?
Yeah. So no doubt.
I would say over a longer period than what I just looked through in my history, I have watched and benefited from Muhammad Hijab videos, like reaction videos, you know? Like, for example, I mentioned he did a reaction to this Honest Tea Talk. So he was critiquing or something that they were saying on their podcast or whatever. And it's exactly like what you're saying. Through his critique, hopefully I wasn't really watching it for the drama element. It's more like, okay, how's he going to critique this? How is this contrary to Islam? And then he would come with his argument, and I would play devil's advocate in my head, right? And just try and play those sides off each other. And I think I've learned and benefited over the years from that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Although one does wonder how the idea for that comes about. And my assumption is that someone sends the clip to them or sends something to them because they're not listening to Honesty. It's a ladies' podcast, the sisters' podcast, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, I've never listened to it, right? But if then someone sent me a clip out of context, they're like, "Oh, look what they've said. React to this." Well, then I'd do it, right? So that's probably how a lot of things work. There's already some sort of issues riling up.
Yeah, I mean,
and then it gets framed.
But that shows as well. There is a better way to doing a reaction video, because you could react to one video, or you could go through their channel, see generally what they're about, what they've said about other topics, and get to know them a bit, and so you have more context, right? That might be ihsan when it comes to reacting.
Yeah, maybe I'm thinking of us and Mind Heist, and like, have we fell into hot water? Not really, and it's been a lot of episodes, and we've certainly been capable of doing so. Like, anything could have been taken out and just thrown around and stuff. But I do think that we try and play both sides on purpose. You know, I say this, but then actually one can interpret. Like, I think everyone speaks, and I watched a video, funnily enough, about this kind of phenomenon of video essays. So video essays, which love a good video essay genre. Absolutely love it. Really wanted to make them. But someone made a video essay critiquing video essays. And the phenomenon was that when they speak about these issues, they speak from such a tone of authority that you just automatically believe everything that's being said.
Yes.
Right? And that creates a phenomenon of, well, we grew up believing everything that was said to us. We grew up watching and consuming media, news, documentaries, just assuming that if they say it and edit it in this way, like, what is this thing that's been presented to me and edited in this way and compiled in this way is truth. So my barriers go away and I just consume it as truth. Now, anyone, like, the barrier of entry to create this kind of content is so low that anyone can present anything and it just becomes truth. And also, the person themselves delivering it doesn't necessarily say, well, this is my opinion on it, but one could say that this is, you know what I mean, give two sides of their argument and actually critique themselves. Kind of like that Eminem 8 Mile kind of thing, where, like, he knows that the battle rapper he's rapping against is about to use everything of his weaknesses. But actually, if he addresses them first,
preemptive strike.
Yeah, preemptive strike on yourself, so that your enemy has nothing left for you.
Yes,
and I think that's it. I think that's it. That's what we need more of.
Muslim CEO.
Yeah.
Our best ever performing ad was that preemptive strike. Yeah. It was legendary. Yeah.
So it was like, what? I know that you're going to click away from this, and you think I'm wasting your time.
No, it was even more direct.
Oh, was it not?
Bro,
really?
The first line is, "You probably think I'm a scammer." Like, anyone with a brain would advise you, don't use the word scammer in, like, a business, like, make money, like, kind of ad, because you're going to plant that idea in their head, right, that you might be a scammer. But we just had an idea, bro. Like, the way we did it, we must have written 3-4 different ads, like, together, and that was just one of them. We thought, let's try it out, but it just turned out to be the best performing one, like, by far. And we got these like marketers, right, in the comments saying, this is such a bad idea, this would never work, an ad like this. But we're like, well, we're still running it a year later, because it worked well. So I learned from that never to critique ads too hard, because you never know what's working sometimes.
100%. Yeah, 100%. No, I think it's something. I think it shows your sincerity as well, and I think it doesn't leave room for controversy, because you've kind of already addressed, like, you know that this storm is coming. So
No, this is the best.
For it.
This is the best way, to be honest, bro. This is what I really like about. This name is coming to mind, but I now can't think of examples. But Nouman Ali Khan, I remember him to be that type, to mention different ways people could talk about it. I think Yasser Qadhi kind of does this. Obviously, being like very academic, that's the way they do it, right? But I always used to like watch those and be like, yeah, I like that style. Look, the way of saying, just basically saying, I believe this is true. I've got all these proofs for it. Yes, there are other opinions, but I think they're wrong. You know what I mean?
Right.
There are that little thing of saying there are other opinions. I think it's wrong. I think this is stronger. Just that thing, I think, makes a huge difference, rather than what most people I've seen do is they talk as though there are no other opinions, or there are only opinions by like idiot, complete fools, you know? But I respect it so much more, and it's so much more convincing, and I feel like the person is a lot more confident when they say, yeah, the Shafi'is have this opinion, and you know, they really explained it well, but I think it's wrong because of this. That for me, that's like so convincing. Like, yes.
Yeah. That's a discourse in knowledge, isn't it? Like specific ilm-based stuff. But I think it kind of gets lost, like we were saying, when it comes to more dunyawi or general issues.
But also, bro, what I've realized recently, because now when I'm making my YouTube video, I start scripting them and everything, right?
Yeah.
And when I'm scripting, like, that's like writing. When you write, you think a lot more about what you're saying. And I started catching myself because I noticed the way I talk is very, like what you're saying, in the middle, right? So I catch myself using words like maybe, could be, yeah? And I realized that YouTubers that make it big do not talk like that.
Yeah.
They do not talk with nuance. They take a position and they defend it hardcore, and everyone else is wrong. So that's why I started taking all that out, bro. No more nuance.
That's the thing. Anyone who does that, like I'm listening to, what am I listening to? Courage is Calling by Ryan Holiday. I've already listened to a few of his books before, so I'm listening to this one. Well, I think there's a newer one coming. There's
this
another
guy's
one
a machine, bro.
Bro, he's doing Discipline is Destiny next, which I'm actually more keen to.
Yeah.
Because I told my wife, I told my wife, I'm about to listen to this, by the way, and I know it's going to make me do something crazy, so prepare yourself. It's one of those ones, like, grab life by the horns, just do it. Like, okay, you know what you need to do, just go out there and do it. We're going to leave this, like, we're going to just make hijrah to some random country. Anyway, you know how it is. But sorry, I was listening to that, and I hadn't listened to anything of his or read anything of his in a while, and it reminded me of my, like, annoyance before, where I was like, oh, he's going to talk about all these figures with such, you know, praise that exactly. And that's exactly what happened. He started talking about Winston Churchill and like his bravery to do particular things. And I just checked out immediately. But I just thought, if I didn't know about Churchill and his history, because of the way that he's speaking with such certainty about all of these people, you know, what's her name? Something Nightingale and Florence Nightingale. So I'm at the beginning. So it's like he spoke about Florence Nightingale with such certainty and praise. Now he's speaking about Winston Churchill, and then he's mentioned Napoleon, and I'm like, if I didn't know anything about these people, I think these are great people. Like, everything is all good. It's all Gucci, right?
They're in Jannah with the Queen,
bro. So this is it. But like, and then I realized, like, I can't sink my teeth into this kind of stuff because it's a mess. Like, these people are a mess. You can't talk to me about how much they've achieved and all their
Churchill was
bravery
a drunk
courage
or something.
Bro, it's just like, yeah, you're cherry picking the praise, and without the negatives, I can't make this real. Like, this isn't real. But
I see what you mean.
That's because I've decimated it and I've broken it down, and I'm more aware of consuming content that is so certain of itself in a world of mixed opinions, of rights and wrongs, of nuances, that it just doesn't work for me. And actually, a lot of this stuff is very shallow. I was talking to my wife earlier. She had a David Goggins book. I think she was just... But funnily enough, I came across some of his content the other day, and I was just really bored and annoyed of it. I was just, because it reminds me, I know he's been through a lot and he became a Marine and all this other stuff. It reminds me, like, half of this stuff is like, oh, I lost weight, you know? It wasn't like, oh, I was in a war for the religion, for the sake of Allah, and I protected like 1,000 people, and I strove, and I was Musa alayhi salam, and I went to Fir'aun, do you understand? Like, these are real, like, epic, real things. Half of the stuff that people speak so much certainty about, like courage is calling. What are people going to do? You're going to start business. Oh, I'm going to go to the gym, lose some weight. Do you know what I mean?
That's not what courage is to be used for.
But this is what all this stuff is produced for. You got to look at the end goal. Like,
I adopted a dog.
Adopted a dog. I quit my job and I started and I think this is why I know I'm going on a bit of a side point, but like I'm kind of critiquing self-help stuff. But like a lot of this time I realize, you know, when we talk about the Quran being ahsanul qasas, you know, like the best stories in the Quran, now I realize, yeah, because nothing else matters. Because even if you talk about like the people that fought against Genghis Khan and all these invaders and that pillage, well, it's just land, and it's not the deen. It's not, you know, the salvation. It's not the afterlife. Like what the prophets and messengers were doing, were working for something so much grander than anything you could possibly do in the dunya, that it makes the things that all these pioneers and you know, martyrs and whatever in the dunya, and when I say martyrs, I'm talking about like, you know,
people that
like
died for something.
For something, exactly. People that strove and died for something other than Islam. It just makes it microscopic in comparison. It's like, oh, look at the great battles in Japan and the samurais that slaughtered each other and those that sacrificed themselves for. Yeah, but it's a lot of it is just dunya. A lot of it was greed. A lot of it was pillaging. A lot of it was money. And then even today, in the modern context, in the Western world, it's like, I quit my job and I became an entrepreneur and I made loads of money. Okay, then what? What do you do with that money? Bought a Lamborghini. Works my garage. I don't know, man. There's this concept in my head where I'm basically saying that true bravery, true courage, true knowledge, it's all with the deen. It's all with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because
I would say mostly, yeah. There are some stories that I would be like, definitely like inspired by. Like, I don't know, just think of like the Black Panthers, bro. Like, putting yourself on the line for justice. I think justice is a big one. Justice is way bigger than land, or, you know what I mean?
I think you're right, actually. I think why I'm reacting like this, and it's good that we have the critique of what I've said, why I'm reacting like this is that 90% of the content that promotes that kind of stuff at the moment is
all about making money. Or losing
or
weight.
the gym, or losing weight. It's making money or losing weight. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you sent me that video, didn't it? What's he say again?
It's like, I'm gonna win or something, like
watch me,
something like that. Watch me, I'm gonna win or something like that. But that's it. Yeah, it's all. There's nothing you can sink your teeth into, because I try and think, who's reading these books?
It's a butter sandwich, no substance.
That's it. Who's like the guy that's actually in prison right now, in the trenches, or in an apartheid system? Is he reading the ego is the enemy?
Preach, brother, preach. Yeah.
Is he reading? No, that stuff comes out of somebody like through shit. Like, they don't have to read a book unless obviously it's a deen that's inspiring them and it's fi sabilillah. That's gonna be a different story, right? But in a vacuum, or a non-Muslim that is in a situation like, where are they drawing that willpower from? Some people might say, oh, I read this one book and it changed my life, you know. But it's just like 90%, I think, Allah knows best, but 90% of this kind of content is for the person trying to lose weight, person trying to make money. And it's reflected by all these, you know, motivational pages and on Instagram that have thousands and thousands of followers, and every video is like, today I'm going to win, I'm going to battle my demons. And it's just, yes, I got up, went to the gym, I did a run. Come on, man, you just got up. I'm not saying, yeah, it is difficult. I'm not saying like doing that is...
Bro, the worst thing is I can't even do that.
Look, yeah, I'm an armchair critic and I'm criticizing people for doing stuff that I can't even do, right? But at the same time, I also think like, is that it? Like, is that our biggest challenges in life? like getting up and running. I'm criticizing myself along with everyone that consumes that content, right? I think there's bigger and wider things to the world. Like let's talk about changing the world. Let's talk about making things better. Let's more valiant things.
But these days the culture is that we are the world. We are everything. You know what I mean? Like me as Ameen, I am the world. Nothing else matters. So I don't need to, I don't know, save the koalas or whatever. I just need to lose weight and be rich, and that's like everything. I have changed the world because I've changed myself. I am the world. I'm everything.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's the culture these days.
It's a manifestation of that drive and carnal desire that people have, isn't it? Look good and have money, and then get the women and get everything you want, and that's all it is. It's just
money, power,
it's almost
respect.
It's kind of like that caveman mentality. I mean, I'm not that I'm believing in human evolution, but it's almost like that.
even caveman, bro. I'll critique you on caveman.
Well, go on then, do it.
You know, no, I'm gonna wait till we finish this. I'm gonna do a whole reaction video. No, but you know, the whole caveman concept, it has that assumption embedded in it that humans before the last 100 years were just like oog, you know, they had no brains. And that obviously goes completely against the idea that there was Adam alayhi salam and he was worshipping Allah, and he was way smarter than people today who can't even acknowledge Allah. So
yeah, I mean, the thing is, you see it today. You see civilizations that were once great civilizations, then made redundant, looking almost like they're cavemen in today's world, and then it's just a cycle. Not that we're going to get into decimating the caveman theory and human evolution in the end of an episode, but like look at the Surah Al-Kahf, Dhul Qarnayn. He met people that couldn't even speak; they didn't have shelter, right? But he had a whole army and a whole civilization behind him that he was in charge of, but they existed at the same time. And this is in the Quran, so we already know that these people are descendants of Adam alayhi salam at some point or other. So just because there's primitive people doesn't mean they've always been primitive, right? Doesn't mean that they couldn't develop tools. And they look at the Amazon, like the lost city of Z. You ever seen that? Like when people they're trying to find this lost civilization. Well, actually, there was indications that there was complex civilizations in the Amazon rainforest that were then lost through time. And then what remains is these cut off tribes and people that are very primitive in their sort of lifestyle. But at the end of the day, they all descended from Adam alayhi salam. That's what we believe, right? They all had knowledge. That's true. But knowledge can be lost. I was thinking today, because of what Putin was saying about nuclear weapons and stuff, and I was like, well, think about it. Like, what knowledge would we have if 90% of the population just got wiped out? And it reminds me of those narrations in relation to one of the last things that will be left for the Muslims is La ilaha illallah. That's primitive, spiritually and religiously primitive. Yeah, that goes back to just the first of anything. That's all that anybody would know. We would have I wouldn't know istinja. I wouldn't know, you wouldn't know the basics anymore. You'd be spiritually primitive, let alone technologically primitive, let alone the things that we rely on are created by experts and pioneers in all other fields. I can't create a phone ever again. If it was just me and you left on the world, bro, we can make it. That's it. Say goodbye to technology.
Don't rely on
say goodbye to everything. Don't rely on anything. What do we know? So, yeah. If anyone ever battles with the evolution thing and the caveman thing, it doesn't mean anything. You're just assuming that there was no smarts behind before the caveman. Allah knows best. Allah knows best.
If anyone has any input on this whole YouTube reaction thing, let me know, because I think we can benefit from a lot of different inputs on this topic.
We did have one earlier, actually. It was on the Mind Heist Twitter page, where we put up a clip about Badr Club or whatever, and someone basically replied saying, "Just shut up." That's what they said, because previously they replied to another one that we were talking about the same issue, where they said, "But the scholars refuted it," or something along those lines. And then this video, just shut up.
No, but that's not constructive.
They said just shut up. No, but they said shut up. That is also an option. You could just give up. Don't make videos anymore.
Yeah,
go and get a job.
That's true, I mean,
It's an option. We didn't like. We on Mind Heist like to explore all the options and all the perspectives, and that is one of them. So I wanted to address your point.
Yeah,
I wanted to address that point. There is always the option of just not doing it anymore.
just shutting up. Yeah,
And people have taken that road. You know, if the fitna is too much, save yourself.
Yeah, maybe I like the sound of my voice too much.
Yeah, we do have good podcast-worthy voices. We should do a podcast one day.
Okay, سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. Yo, you know this dua is so needed.
Bro, we're getting better at this podcast thing, bro. I think honestly we should do this. We should do podcast. Thank you for listening to this trial run, the pilot episode.
The
of
first
season 2.
I feel like the first half of this episode, I'm just going to delete it.
No, it was great.
Oh,
do you know what's happened, bro? I think I hit a point of thought that you didn't think of, and then since then, it was like halfway through this episode, I addressed something, like, because you were very confident and in saying, this is how I'm going to do my videos. I'm not going to fall into this and this because I'm very certain of myself. And then I think I hit you with a sucker punch of what could potentially happen, and then you realized, oh yeah, I would feel like I have to respond to that, and then realize that is basically what happens to everyone else. Everyone goes into this game thinking they have a game plan
until you get punched in the face.
Until you get a very personal punch, you know, and it doesn't have to be personal in the sense that it's affected you personally, but in the sense that there could be something incorrect, or they put you in a bad way, or they misrepresented you, and it's your ego. And at that point, your ego is your enemy. But guess what? That controversy, and the final point, sorry, I'm stretching it, that controversy is weaker 5 hours after it's posted, 10 hours after it's posted, 15 days, 2 weeks, 30 days, a year after. Nobody cares about it anymore. They're on to the next thing. So actually, there is something to be said about putting your point out there and dropping it and walking away.
That's why
because
I don't have Instagram and stuff.
It only garners some attention, you know, for a certain amount of time.
I'm going to turn to you for advice when it happens.
Finally, yes, I'm your role model.
Hold me. You need to come over here and hold me back. Hold me back. Let me at it.
Don't do it, bro. Yarlin.
Okay. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Assalamu alaikum.